Let's make a breakfast pizza.
I'm surprised it took me this long to make one of these, because I have so many pizza videos and not one of them is a breakfast pizza, so let's make this one possible. So you think usually when I make a pizza video I start with the pizza dough, and that's exactly what I'm making, and you're probably confused. Why are you cutting up a bell pepper and dicing it? Well, I'm going to put this into the dough, which was an idea that popped into my head kind of at the last minute, and I was like, what if I jazzed up my pizza dough a little bit by adding some kind of vegetable? And I thought bell peppers would be perfect for this. I cooked my diced bell pepper in olive oil over medium heat for about 10 minutes, and then when I was done, I let that cool off for a little bit while I made the rest of the dough. I've got some all-purpose flour here, and I added a little bit of salt, and I also added some active dry yeast. Then I'm going to add my roasted bell pepper, and it's okay if it's still a little warm. In fact, that actually might be better because heat activates yeast a lot faster, but you don't want it to be scorching hot. Then I'm going to add my water, and I'm going to put this into my stand mixer. Until the dough comes together, you want to develop that gluten, and if you want to knead this by hand, that is totally fine too. It will take a little bit longer and it's a little bit messier, that's why I like using the stand mixer. But if you do not have one of these, that is totally fine. Making this dough is still possible. Then I'm just going to put this on the counter on a floured work surface. Do not add too much flour because you don't want this to be a super dry, dense dough, and I'm just going to knead this a little bit more until everything is incorporated nicely, and it looks like the bell pepper is going throughout the dough and not clumped up in just one part of the dough. And that's looking pretty good, and the dough is very smooth, and this is going to go into a oiled bowl. Not too much oil, you don't want it drowning in there. And then I'm going to cover this with some plastic wrap, and you can either leave this in the fridge overnight on the counter for 24 hours, or if you're in a hurry and you want to make this right now, an hour, maybe 2 hours is just fine. And while this is rising, I'm going to make a Hollandaise sauce, which is not something I have made on this channel yet, which I'm very excited about, and also kind of nervous because I'm worried that I'm going to scramble the eggs, but we'll get to that in a minute. Anywho, I added some egg yolks, some water, lemon juice, and I also cubed up some butter, and it's better to cube it up because you want it to melt faster. And the main trick to perfecting this sauce is to, one, not have your heat up too high. You want this to be on medium-low. And you want to constantly stir it. Do not walk away from this. Do not take your eye off of it. Keep whisking until you get a very thick looking sauce. And this is looking perfect. And once it does look like this, immediately take it off the heat, and then you can add your seasonings. And I added some salt, some pepper, some paprika, and a little bit of onion powder. I wanted a little bit of an oniony flavor, but very, very subtle. I literally just added a pinch in there, and I'm just going to whisk that up. And I just want to give it a taste to make sure it's good, and I'm glad I tasted it because I do need a little bit more salt, and this is perfect, so on to the next thing. We're going to shred some cheese. Instead of mozzarella, I'm using white sharp cheddar, and I felt like this was a perfect cheese because usually when I eat an omelet, I like to use cheddar. Once that's all shredded up, I knew I wanted meat on this pizza, and I decided to use a ham steak. And I'm literally just dicing up a ham steak that I found at the supermarket. This would also be great to make after the holidays if you have any leftover ham. And now it's time to assemble our pizza. I didn't show you, but I did preheat my oven to 550 degrees Fahrenheit. My dough is done rising, and I'm going to roll it out on a floured work surface with a rolling pin. I'm not going to toss the dough because I don't want to rip it. And can we just admire for a minute how good this dough looks? I mean, I don't mean to toot my own horn, but I'm actually really, really proud of this, and I love the way it looks with the bell pepper in there. On a greased 14-inch pizza pan, be sure to hit your camera in the process, put the dough on the pan, and stretch it out a bit. And I've shown you guys many different methods to cook pizza, and this is one that I really, really like. I like using this pan if I want to make one large pizza. Once the dough has been fitted onto the pan, I'm going to let this rise a little bit more while I make my scrambled eggs. This is something you want to do right before the pizza goes into the oven. In a bowl, I've got 6 eggs. I'm adding some salt, some pepper, some milk, and I'm just going to whisk this up. And right before we put this into the pan, I'm actually going to roast up some garlic and some olive oil. This is a trick that I learned from my friend Mike. So Mike, if you're watching this, big shout out to you. Thank you for this, because garlic in scrambled eggs is actually delicious and a great combo. You think this is something that I would have done a long time ago, but no, this is a very recent thing for me. So I'm just going to roast my garlic in the olive oil for just a few minutes until they start browning. And then I'm going to add my eggs. Be sure to lower your temperature a bit because you do not want to burn this. And then I'm just going to slowly scramble them and toss them around with my rubber spatula. You can use a wooden spoon if you'd like. And let me remind you that this is going to go into the oven once we put it onto our pizza, so do not cook your eggs all the way. I mean, you do want them to be fluffy, but you do not want them to be fully cooked. Alright, I think all of our components are done. Time to put this together. Our dough has risen a little bit more, which is great because once this bakes, we'll have a good end result. And the first layer will be our Hollandaise sauce. I'm being a little generous here. And you're probably going to end up using all the sauce that you made. This recipe will be enough to make at least a 14 to 16 inch pizza. Next are my scrambled eggs, and I broke them up a little bit so that I could spread them out a little bit better. Next is our white sharp cheddar cheese, and you will be using all 8 ounces of this. I feel like that eggs and cheese are such a good combo. And last but not least is our diced ham, and what's great about putting this on top is that once it goes into the oven, it's going to brown up. And lastly, I'm going to brush some olive oil onto the crust. That's going to help this brown up a little bit better into the oven. And speaking of which, this is going to go into a 550-degree Fahrenheit oven for 10 to 12 minutes. It might take a little bit longer depending on your oven, but please, please, please keep an eye on it. While that's baking, I'm going to chop up some fresh dill. I like fresh herbs on my pizza, and what's great is that it's not just for a garnish, but it's also for some extra flavor. And what's great about fresh dill is that it has a grassy, tangy flavor to it, so it's perfect for this kind of pizza. That's ready to go, and that means our pizza is ready. And doesn't this look great? It browned up so well in the oven, and the bottom browned up a little bit too, thanks to putting olive oil on the bottom of the pan. As much as I love using the cast iron pan to make pizza, I feel like this is a new go-to for me. I let my pizza cool off for about 5 minutes before I added the herbs, because once you do add the herbs to a scorching hot pizza, it does quickly brown up, and I didn't want that to happen. I still wanted the dill to keep its green color, and this is looking great, so now it's time to finally dig in. The smells going on in this kitchen are incredible right now, so I really need to eat this. By the way, in case you're wondering, by the time I finished making this pizza, it was around 7 o'clock at night, so it was not my breakfast, it was in fact my dinner. Have you ever had breakfast for dinner before? It's like the best thing ever. Having said that, this pizza is absolutely delicious. You can taste every element here. The Hollandaise sauce is tangy and well seasoned, the eggs are garlicky and also well seasoned, that cheddar cheese is great because it adds a nice sharpness, the roasted ham adds a nice umami flavor, and then that dill obviously adds a nice freshness, but what I really want to talk about is the crust. Oh my goodness, adding the roasted red bell pepper was probably the best idea about this pizza. I'm making this dough again in the future. It is so good. In fact, I feel like it would make a good focaccia. So make this pizza, please. It'll make your family very happy, especially when they first wake up in the morning. Alright guys, I hope you all enjoyed this one. Please remember to like and subscribe, and I will see you all next time.